Malthusian who wanted to limit the population, particularly with those people she found inferior. Now, of course, these days the left calls it reproductive health. Her lover was H.G. Wells, who saw death as really the only way to gain what he called a scientific utopia. By the way, his classic novel, Time Machine, I know we've all seen the movie, we all think we know it, but what it really was a warning about allowing people with bad genes to proliferate. I'm going to bring up my panel. Fox Business contributor, host of Matching Global, Katrina Campins, along with Federalist elections correspondent, Brandon Lyman. Ladies, here's the thing. So today, I was reading an article. Elite New York high schools admit 8 black students in a class of 781. What I see is an environment where the left has failed miserably. And they can never accept these sort of failures. And so they keep creating these sort of crazy controversies. Not only do these controversies keep us occupied, but they mitigate. But they're the ones who felt, Katrina, in my mind, they're the ones who have felt blacks and Hispanics who voted for decades and kept them in power.
You know, it's crazy. Like, breaking news, hot, sexy women sell products, right? Back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, I grew up with Cindy Crawford, Christy Brinkley, and it worked in ads, you know, being feminine and powerful and strong. Now it almost seems like being a conservative woman is like counterculture. It's like, oh my God, she's a rebel because she's actually embracing her femininity. I thought it's really interesting, though, because this ad is very simple, but yet on a business side, they got 4 billion impressions. Their stock went up 10%, so it's working. So it just proves that we need to get back to the basics, and the left is just creating noise because they don't know what to do with it. I do love the fact that now a lot of young women are seeing women supporting women through this movement. I think it's really interesting, and they're embracing their authentic self.
Brianna?
Yeah, well, I agree with her. And I think actually tying the elite schools to the Sydney Sweeney ad, look, the left has a really bad habit of filtering everything through a lens of race or ideology. So Sydney Sweeney, race. With the elite private schools, they want to pretend this is about racism. They say that disparities in racial outcomes must mean discrimination. That is an oversimplification that ignores a lot of...
They say it's a symbol of segregation. No, it's a symbol of the awful public education that you've given them because of expectations that they're too dumb from kindergarten on to take the rigors of the same classes that the other students took.
Yes, and it's essentially like a quasi-affirmative action, right? We're going to try to lower the test or make a different threshold, and that only hurts students who are then not held to a certain standard, which actually helps them strive to achieve more.
All right, let me ask you this. So I'm reading about elite overproduction. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about this. Apparently it's happened before in this country. Elite overproduction occurs when society produces too many people who feel entitled to high status and high incomes relative to capacity. So we don't really have the capacity. When they can't get that, at the end of the day, these elites mostly just want to be elite, right? They don't want to do all the work. And then they become frustrated, and they sort of, they say they form alliances with marginalized populations in order to dispose of the existing elites. And the reason I think this is important is this Mamdani phenomenon, and how really it's attracted college-educated people. Like, I mean, does this kind of explain that to a degree?
I think so. I think nowhere is this more apparent than in Mamdani, because if you look at the voting split, Hispanics and blacks actually voted more for Cuomo, whereas white progressives voted for Mamdani. And they champion socialism not because they reject wealth status. It's because they resent the fact that they have not acquired wealth, and they cloak their resentment in moral outrage. And they pretend, well, we're doing this for the blacks and for the Hispanics. The blacks and Hispanics don't want this. They made it clear when they voted.
Right.
I think what's happening with Mamdani as well is that they don't really understand what socialism is. You know, the younger generation hasn't experienced it, and maybe they don't have family members that have experienced it. But I grew up listening to the stories of what happens when you're in, you know, it's stuck in communism and socialism, and everything gets stripped of you. And so I have very strong feelings about this. And I think what's needed right now is education. I just think, but what I like about it is the younger generation, the ones that are voting for Mamdani or think that he's a good idea, they're humble enough to understand, hey, I don't understand what socialism is, but I'm willing to learn about it. So I think education is key here so that they understand that there's a risk to losing freedom.
Right. They say you only can vote for socialism once, though. That's the problem. That's a hell of an education. Here's something else that's interesting, though, along the same lines. And this is from Pew. From just 2023 to 2025, the shift in political identification, young people, 18 to 29-year men, plus 44 for Republican, women, 18 to 29 plus 14 for Republican. What's that all about?
Well, I think it's actually what's interesting is if you look at Gen Z, it's actually a tale of two different Gen Zers, right? 18 to 24 tend to shift more conservative, whereas 25 to 29 do shift a little more to the left. But men in particular have made a massive shift, and there's two big reasons. One, they think the Democrats are overcautious. They are too performative. They see Republicans as authentic. The second problem is a lot of young men, according to a SAM memo that came out, the SAM Project, they said they don't really know what it means to be a man. They're struggling to define it. And Democrats define men as being toxic, right? Being a problem.
I remember the election. I remember President Obama chastising men for
It's always offensive, whereas Republicans are embracing men and giving them an empowering vision forward.
I think the Republicans, to your point, are definitely embracing masculinity, and I think men now feel free to be who they are. And so I think, ironically, with all of this craziness, we're beginning to see everything go back to the way it's supposed to be, slowly but surely, and men are embracing being men, providing, protecting, and leading, and women now feel comfortable, right, embracing their femininity and allowing men to do so. So ironically, I think regardless of all the craziness, we're going back to the values that matter.
All right, because I'm reading about man keeping.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Real quick, we got a few minutes. So it's the latest feminist buzzword. It's essentially women are just worried because of the emotional support from men. It's just a burden. It's just too much of a burden.
I feel very strongly about this because this is the thing, is I love the idea that a man goes out there, he works hard, he leads a woman, and then he comes back home to a woman, he finds his peace and emotional support. I love that. The problem is that men are taking it, some men are taking it to another degree where they basically are thinking, hey, I need another mother and a therapist and also a sugar mama. Let's face it, they don't want to work. And so that's why we need to bring masculinity.
Do they deserve some man keeping? The men that don't work.
That don't work?
That do work.
Of course. I'll give you all the love in the world if you work hard and come home. Like, you know?
Well, it's like, why else when you get married, you take a vow for sickness and in health, for good and for bad. If your man's having a bad day or is, sick, you're supposed to be there as a partner to help them. And that includes taking on an emotional burden of theirs.
Yeah. Amen to that.
So I got less than a minute to go. A big question: are we witnessing a marriage comeback? I can't tell you how many people in the last 2 weeks have come in the studio and said, "I just got married." I thought people were giving up on that.
You know what's so interesting about this is my hair and makeup team in Florida. Literally, I'm trying to book them, and they're always booked for weddings. And I'm like, why are so many people getting married now? I mean, I guess I've been down that train, so.
Yeah, you're trying. What the hell?
Why are these people doing this?
It's just that I'm not going to be man keeping. I'm just letting you know right now. Don't come back here.
I think
it's young people, though.
Young people, especially young people who are shifting conservative, are embracing that nuclear family because it actually creates a prosperous country.
They go hand in hand.
And I think it makes sense, and that building the family is really the foundation for this country. So, on a serious note,
ladies, thank you both very, very much. All right.
Very good for the department because it